what's changed in the last couple of years is we've gone from 40 million ounces to 65, but we've also added a million ounces of gold. I fundamentally believe this is a 100 million ounce silver camp on an equivalent basis. If you factor in the gold, we're already there. We're closer to 150 million ounces silver equivalent already. And so I think we'll take that 65 million ounces of silver, and I think it has the potential to go to 100. But how many millions of ounces of gold will we discover alongside?
Right, just with byproduct.
Where Dolly Varden is located is up in an area that they refer to as the Golden Triangle. So this is an area that people think of it as a gold area, an area that is, some call it the most prolific, the richest 20 kilometers on planet Earth for gold mineralization. And people celebrate the 155 million ounces of gold. Like if you were to get out a calculator and multiply 155 million by $2,500 an ounce, that is a lot of gold discovered up in the Golden Triangle. Now, what people miss, what they omit from the story, is 1.2 billion ounces of silver that have been discovered alongside that gold. Connection established.
But I want to revert back. You mentioned something about 1.2 billion ounces in surrounding, because that's how much our annual demand was last year. Is that what you were talking about?
So, where Dolly Varden is located is up in an area that they refer to as the Golden Triangle. So, this is an area that people think of it as a gold area, an area that is, some call it the most prolific, the richest 20 kilometers on planet Earth for gold mineralization. And people celebrate the 155 million ounces of gold. Like if you were to get out a calculator and multiply 155 million by $2,500 an ounce, that is a lot of gold discovered up in the Golden Triangle. Now, what people miss, what they omit from the story, is 1.2 billion ounces of silver that have been discovered alongside that gold. And to me, what attracted me to this area was what started as a silver mine, the premier mine that the Guggenheim family had in the 1920s, and they were producing in the 1930s. And, I'm a student of history. And what I've studied is, different times in history where gold and silver were extremely relevant. And I focused on those times and I asked myself, as I looked at debts that were rising, as I looked at some of the challenges that we're facing as a world, scarcity, overpopulation. And I looked at all these challenges and I asked myself, were there times in history that were similar? And what did people do to successfully get through these difficult times? What happened when wars went from regional to global? What preceded those hot wars? Were there trade wars? Were there currency wars? And I've done a lot of reading. I've had teachers like Jim Rickards and I mentioned Eric Sprott and others who've done some incredible work. I see a Miles Franklin hat just to the right of you there, and people like Andy Scheckman, who have been very vocal about what's happening. And anyways, what it's all come down to for me is very simply here up in Canada in the north, what got us through the Great Depression was gold and silver mining. And so I looked at the area, and the premier mine, it started as a silver discovery. It became known at the time as the richest gold mine of the era. And then that was outdone in the 1980s by the Eskay Creek mine. And then now we've got Newmont, which is the world's largest publicly traded gold mining company. This is a company that's making like $2 billion a year. They are operating something called the Brucejack mine. So these are all mines in the Golden Triangle. And my point here is when I came across Dolly Varden 4 years ago, I saw a similarity in the area. Dolly had some silver, high grade silver, past production. But the question I had was, how much more could we find? Number
Right.
one. Number two was, could we find gold like these other great mines that were around us? And so what's changed in the last couple of years is we've gone from 40 million ounces to 65, but we've also added 1 million ounces of gold. And
Mm,
that's just from a compliant third party estimate. We've actually made a lot more discoveries that haven't been incorporated into the resource estimate. But I fundamentally believe this is a 100 million ounce silver camp on an equivalent basis. If you factor in the gold, we're already there. We're closer to 150 million ounces silver equivalent already. And so I think we'll take that 65 million ounces of silver, and I think it has the potential to go to 100. But how many millions of ounces of gold will we discover alongside?
right. Just with byproduct. Yeah, what is the byproduct? What does that look like with most mines or most of yours in your
Listen,
experience?
they're all different, but I think this what your question takes me to an important idea, and the important idea is most of the silver in the world is a byproduct. Really,
Yeah, yeah,
something like 71.5% of silver comes off as a byproduct. So if we get into an environment where Samsung and other companies decide to use more and more, and you get more of these double-sided solar panels and photovoltaics, and the whole solar industry has gone from 3% of the market 10 years ago to about 15% of the market today, and scheduled to go to 50% of the market. And that's without the double-sided panels. But
right.
if you look at some of those growing use cases, um, now if I'm Samsung and I say, okay, well, I need a lot more silver. The challenge that I'm going to have as an executive at Samsung is if silver's getting thrown off as a byproduct, I've got to go to a copper miner. I've got to go to a lead zinc miner, and I've got to go and ask them to increase their focus. But it doesn't work that way. If it's coming in as a byproduct, they're there to mine the base
That
metals.
right.
So, so really, where I think the sweet spot, Slayer, in the industry is identifying the 28.5% of the silver mining market, which is the primary pure silver mines. And what's even more important and rare is finding those mines in a place where people want you to mine. The company has continued to make new discoveries, and just to remind your viewers and for anybody new to the channel, I've got a company that's up in Canada that has taken over a couple of past producing high grade silver mines. So these were some of the richest silver mines in the world, some of the country's largest silver mines when they were operating. And my business model for the company is to try to, through exploration, discovery, and by buying up neighboring mines, to put together and amass a large silver inventory. Because my belief is as the silver price rises, the value of those ounces in the ground is going to go up. And that, to me, is the most levered way for a silver speculator, a silver investor to get access to metals. So part of that vision is on the discovery side. So we employ some of the best scientists in the world, and these scientists have come up with theories and ideas based on other discoveries. There's been about 1.2 billion ounces of silver discovered outside of my property. We've got about a tenth of that discovered on our property. And so what we've had in August is we've put out some expansion discovery news. So we've stepped away from known deposits. We've stepped out and we're showing that the silver is continuing. So as we estimate the tonnage, the number of new ounces we're discovering, it's quite meaningful, it's quite material. And then on the back of that, and Slayer, you probably know Eric Sprott, legendary
Yeah.
silver investor. So Eric is leading a financing. So we've got a bunch of our loyal investors, including Eric Sprott, Sprott Asset Management, and some of the Sprott fund managers who are part of a $32 million financing. So our investors came to us and said, look, we want you guys to continue doing what you're doing. You're adding high grade silver mineral inventory. And so the company is going to double down on the exploration efforts. We're expanding the program, and I'll be going to various conferences in the month of September, and I'll be able to tell the investing world that the company's got over $40 million in the bank, which is a pretty strong place for a little junior exploration company. So yeah, that's what's new at Dolly Varden.
Wow, that's incredible. It seems like you guys are very strategic upon, how you're going about this, and it's very clever. I really did like how you mentioned last time that you're just building like an underground, bank account.
If you think something is undervalued, why would you give it away when it's undervalued?
Right.
So why rush out when I think silver, it's less hated today than it was 4 years ago. But when I came into Dolly Varden, silver was around $16 an ounce. It was hated. And if you think about most companies, they couldn't make money mining silver. So why would I go out and exert a bunch of energy, a bunch of capital and time doing something that's not profitable? That didn't make a lot of sense to me. What made a lot of sense to me, though, was because of the low silver price, the valuations of these projects were nothing. Dolly Varden, despite being the richest silver mine in the British Empire, Canada's third largest silver producing mine, was trading at a valuation closer to $15 million. And with the price of silver doubling, and with us making some strategic moves, like buying some additional deposits that increase our mineral inventory and hiring the right scientists that have unlocked the discovery potential of the project, the value of the company has gone from about 15 million to about 300 million. And think about that. If you look at where silver's scheduled to go, you know, just industrial use alone is
Right.
scheduled to consume all the silver we as an industry mine. So if you really think about that, by the end of 2025, which is only 16 months away, if there is 1% in investment demand, if a guy like me or a guy like you wants to go and get some physical silver because it's a hedge against inflation, it's a hedge against systemic risk, well, we're going to be competing with industry. Industry is going to take
Yeah.
all the 850 million ounces what we're mining. So to me, that is like I look at the last 100 years in silver, there was two moments that investment demand drove price. Okay. Back in 1980, where the price went
Yep.
to $50, and back in 2011, the price went to $49. So out of the last 100 years, there was two occasions where investment demand drove price. Now, the other 98% of the time, we were in a bear market. We were in a market where it was just based on industry. Now, despite being in a bear market, investment demand, Slayer, was still at 30%, around 250 million ounces a year. Okay. So the reason we're seeing annual deficits of north of 250 million ounces is because industry, through all these new applications, and this is before Samsung developed the silver battery.
I was gonna mention that too.
Sorry, so maybe that's a nice segue into that battery because I think
Yeah.
this could be a game changer for the industry.
Yeah, I'm working on a video literally right before we got on. I'm like in the middle of like putting together this big video about it.